Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Neil Earnshaw.
In the week of the warmest winter weather on record, why, following a turnout of thousands of school children to protest over climate change inaction, why was Parliament empty for the debate, particularly on the government benches?
So this was a debate today that came as a result of action by you, Leila, and of course there were thousands of school children out on the streets protesting against climate change, but the debating chamber was, well, what, 30 MPs in there?
Something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. I should say I supported those strikes. I'm a teacher, by the way. I've said I'll support them, and then I'm going to do everything I can to keep them in class, because exams are coming, and I think that's what I would have wanted for them to do. But they were absolutely inspirational. And there were 2,000 young people who came out in Bond Square in Oxford, and you know, they were just so full of passion, and they had all their facts and figures, and there's no planet B and signs and everything like that. And I thought to myself, my God, they're absolutely right. And Brexit, yeah, is a big deal, but actually the biggest deal is the fact that our planet is dying. We have a report that's come out that says in 12 years, if we don't do something now, in 12 years it will be too late. We have to do this now. So I went to, there's a procedure you can go to, a thing called the Backbench Business Committee, and you can get a debate. And what I discovered was extraordinary. It was the first time in nearly 2.5 years that climate change had been debated on the floor of the House, which is atrocious. And I think that says everything about, firstly, how this government takes this seriously, because it'd be so easy for them to do this in government time, and they haven't. And that's one of the answers to the question, is why wasn't it so well attended? Well, it's because it's on a Thursday afternoon, and people go back and do their surgeries, and they're in their constituency.
Okay, well, look,
and what is the blame for
But the main thing is, the government should have already been doing this. Why did we wait 2.5 years before there was a debate on the floor of the House? And that's what I tried to stop.
Nadeem?
Well, first of all, if you look at what we've done to date, we have reduced emissions faster than any of the G7 countries. We look to set out our plans to decarbonise
London
the
has
UK
breached
economy.
its annual EU emission limits within the first month every year for a decade up to last year, and it's not looking great this year.
Well, we look to decarbonise.
Are you happy with that?
No, of course not. That's what you took the words out of my mouth, in the sense that I was saying that we look to decarbonise the UK economy by 2032. But there's so much more that we have to do. That's the point. We're putting £6 billion into making sure that we do more renewable. 50% of our electricity now is from renewable energy. Yeah, that's a good thing, but it's not good enough. We've got to go further, which is why I think engaging with those young people is the right thing to do. I absolutely
But do you think they play truant?
No,
some of the stuff that was coming out of the government was frankly...
I think it's refreshing to see young people come out and engage with this agenda, engage with politics. I'd like to see them come out on a Saturday, not on a weekday.
They did.
But nevertheless,
the point is,
it's really refreshing.
But the point is they did. They were there out on Saturday. They've been talking about this. They've been writing to us. Yeah. I get lovely letters, particularly from kids who are as young as 10.
They were out on a Friday.
No, yes, they were. And their parents were with them. Their parents were with them. And they were utterly responsible. They told their parents where they were. They told their schools where they were. So, but it is up to us. And actually, if it's 12 years, it's likely we're going to be some of the politicians still in the House trying to deal with this. The question is, we are not meeting our targets. We have to be carbon neutral, not by 2050. We need much...
2032.
Well, we need much, much, much faster, deeper action on this.
Well, we want to go to setting zero emission targets, and we've got the Committee on Climate Change advising us on this. So we are very ambitious on this. I think it is a good thing that the public of all ages engages with this.
When the Minister wrote the letter to the Committee on Climate Change asking for that advice, she explicitly put a clause in that letter that said that they were not allowed to advise her about the fourth and fifth carbon budgets, which are the 2 5-year periods leading up to 2032. And that is because at the moment we are not going to reach those carbon budgets. We're not going to reach the targets set in those. In fact, we're likely only to get halfway towards the fifth carbon budget by that time. And yet, even though she was asking for a stricter threshold, a lower threshold in zero carbon, she said that we wouldn't... What she said was that she wouldn't change what was going to happen in the fourth and fifth carbon budgets. That is, for the next 12 years, she would do no change. She then, because of the outcry, the outrage that we had in Parliament about that, she then had to do a second letter to the Committee on Climate Change saying, oh, OK, tell us what you really think, don't be circumscribed in that way. But yours is the government that has actually cut the solar feed-in tariffs. It's cut the whole programme for zero carbon.
It'd be good of you to mention that we're putting 10 billion a year into renewables by 2021.
You're not
it would
on
be
track.
Very good of you to say that.
15% should be the renewables figure by next year. There's no way you're going to meet it. And all the time, this government has dragged its feet. You've lived off, absolutely lived off, the regulation that we set in place in the 2008 Climate Change Act. You've lived off the subsidies that we put in place for renewables at that point. And you've then got the cheek to say, actually, we've got more solar renewable than we've ever had before. Yet you've cut the programme for it. And at the same time, you give 75% capital allowances to fracking companies for fossil fuel.
Now, here's the thought. I think the whole green topics would be a lot bigger in British politics if there was proportional representation, because as it stands, with first past the post, the major parties don't need to worry about that topic, whilst, for example, in Germany, with the proportional representation, the Green Party has been in Parliament since the early 80s. So, and as a result of that, then obviously you've got the whole green topics in Parliament and in public debate, well, essentially 40 years ahead of the UK. So, and that actually, funnily enough, I think a lot of that is down to the electoral system.
Well, we had a referendum under the coalition government.
And what I would say is, actually, what we need to do this
Layla, briefly, because I want to hear from
we
the
need to
audience.
completely change the type of economy that we have. We need an economy that stops companies from investing in fossil fuels. And we say that we've got new energy mix. Actually, we've outsourced a lot of it to other countries that do use fossil fuels. You know, this is not right. We need a complete change in how we run our economy that rewards companies for investing in green technologies and that rewards, for example, pensions funds
Layla,
from
we hear you, but
divesting.
you've
No,
spoken
when
a lot on this.
Nadine just said there was a referendum on proportional representation, well, it was an alternative voting, wasn't it? And it's very difficult to win a referendum in Britain if both major parties are against it. So I don't think it ever stood a chance.
I take your point.
The Lib Dems were actually in government with us, and part of our promise of
but
coalition
Labour
agreement.
didn't want it, did they? Labour and the Conservatives, neither of you, anyway.
Let's keep on the topic of climate change. if we can.
Let's do gardening.
The woman at the back.
I just think the government's approach to this is absolutely abhorrent. Bernie Sanders has referred to climate change as a national security risk. Why has neither the Conservative Party or the Labour Party said the same?
We have. Sorry, we have.
It's why we're
But
setting
you're
net
not
zero
actively
emission
involving,
targets.
like Fiona said, only 30 MPs turned up to that debate.
I was one of
And
them.
I think
I
think the
was
way we
there.
approach climate change as well is that, oh, we'll reduce emissions by this, we'll reach this target, and we'll do this. But frankly, ice caps are melting, sea levels are rising, and we've got 12 years to fix it.
The woman there.
I was just wondering, you might be able to solve this perhaps by making the Secretary of State for Climate Change or somebody with particular interest and expertise like Claire Perry. Why not make her Deputy Prime Minister? She can then coordinate the policy response to this issue across the entirety of government.
Lionel, what's your view?
Well, I hate to be a downer, but...
Because we've all been so upbeat so far.
Yeah. I came back from a literary festival in Mumbai recently, and honestly, I spent so much time in bumper-to-bumper traffic, virtually not moving, horrible air pollution, cars in terrible shape, and, you know, when you look at what's going on in a country that size, it doesn't especially matter what gets said in a parliamentary debate on a Thursday afternoon in this country.
Oh, it does, Lionel. That's wrong. That's completely wrong. It does.
Well, we're talking about it today,
You set
so that's
leadership
good.
and you set yourself a target that you deliver, then the people should also follow. Other countries should be doing their bit, and they are, countries like China, India, and other countries. But it's wrong to say just because those countries have problems, then we should forget about doing anything.
So do you think there's
I am
just no
certainly
point?
not saying that we shouldn't do anything. And there are many benefits to cutting carbon, including improving the air I breathe. So I feel personally invested in it. I mean, when I go cycling in London and I exert myself, I often find that my lungs hurt and I feel slightly nauseated. And it's the air. So I do care about that. But I would say that if you really care about bringing down the carbon, then one of the things you have to do is address the larger energy crisis in this country. You're going to run out of energy and the capacity to generate Britain's own energy, and that means that you're going to have to import it, and you're not going to have control over how that energy is generated.
We have the largest wind and wave resource in the world. We have the largest wind and wave resource in the world. If we move and transition to renewables, the great thing about the sun is that it keeps on going. If you keep on digging fossil fuels out of the ground, there comes a point when they're no longer there, and actually we already know that there are 5 times more fossil fuels already identified than we can afford to burn, because if we do burn them, actually we will exceed the dangerous threshold of climate change.
I was saying that successive governments in this country have not responsibly addressed the long-term energy provision for the UK. And that's what I'm saying. Well, so it's not a matter of just what the mix is, but every year there's this crisis getting closer and closer. Whereas, how are we going to turn on the lights?
The woman in the red sweater.
I think none of you have answered the question, which was why wasn't there many people in Parliament that day? I think the real reason is for the last 2 years, not many MPs have done much more real work than focus and bicker about Brexit. And they need to get on with what really matters in the world.
Again. Oh my goodness.
And in the meanwhile, in the last 2 years, the third world countries that have managed to ban simple things just like plastic carrier bags from their countries. And that simple stuff makes a big difference. But we're too busy bickering. So.
The woman there. Yes.
So one of the big issues I have is, I think that we should be investing more in, getting people out of cars onto public transport is a big one. And in the northwest of England, we've got people waiting hours and hours and hours to get onto what used to be a bus, but's now a train, a diesel train, chugging along at, almost going backwards. People are having to put on thermal, underwear because they're so cold in the winter months because there's no central heating on them. When are we going to invest in our public rail sector and get the trains back in action? Because at the moment, it's a bit of a joke.
Do you want to answer that, Nadine?
Well,
Train's a bit of a joke.
I think there's always more to do. The investment continues to go in.
But you can always say there's always more to do, Nadine. You've got to do a bit better than that, surely.
We're investing in HS2, which is an important investment to make. And I see it near my constituency, in Birmingham, not just the investment and the training and the apprenticeships that are going into developing the know-how to develop HS2, but also just the investment in other jobs who've seen the West Midlands, and I hope also now the North, when the extension goes further, in the same way. It's about the gentleman who asked earlier about rebalancing the economy. That is what this is about. An investment in rail and road, by the way,
is equally important. But it's also about the wrong priorities, because, for example, this huge project, the Oxford to Cambridge Expressway, a possible 8-lane highway linking the two, is at the moment roughly going to cost in the order of £5 billion. For more road, what if we didn't spend it on that? What if we spent it on reopening rail, in massive investment in cycling? That's exactly the kind of ambitious thing we should be doing, not building more roads.
Man there, in blue suit. Yes.
I think it's very, very easy to say that we need to get more people into public transport, but in London we have a mayor who has been systematically cutting our bus services over the last 2 years. The bus that I get to school every single day has had a 20% in service reduction since January alone. I mean, how can we be saying to people, you need to choose more sustainable transport options, when there just aren't the options there?
Man in the pink shirt. Our time is up. I can see lots of you still got your hands up. Apologies, I'm not going to be able to get to you.